In July 1915, while the 6th Battalion's final phase of training on Windmill Hill, Salisbury Plain was in progress, the new army divisions due for deployment overseas had their photographs taken, as was normal for the time. The fantastic photographs that follow are from a booklet containing the full collection of the 6th Battalion group photographs, and, so far, is the only fully intact one I've come across in the 20-odd years I've been researching the regiment. Gale and Polden in Aldershot took, printed and published these ones, making the booklets available for the ripe old sum of 2 shillings and 9pence. Or alternatively, a large mounted single group photograph was available for the bargain price of 2 shillings and 6pence, not forgetting to add the 6pence for postage. Please note that as much as I'd love to list each soldier shown, the men contained within the photographs are not named. Therefore any names I refer to are the men I've seen during my own research and recognise, so if you can add to the names, please let me know. Over time I will add more names as I verify them, but I wanted to make these excellent photos available now, to save you having to wait until I feel I've finally gone as far as I can with the identifications. This is the 6th Battalion's entire officer cadre. The front row are always the more senior officers, in this case being Honorary Lieutenant and Quartermaster Joseph Archibald Martin Hislop. These 2 officers are present in all of the numbers 5 to 8 platoon groups. This is Major Reginald Huquet, who is also in the numbers 1 to 4 platoons and the Staff Sergeant photographs. Here is Major Bertie Phillip Newbolt, the battalion's second in command, who is also in other group photographs. This is their commanding officer, Lieutenant Colonel Hubert Frederick Barclay, who as you would expect is also present in many of the other photographs. Captain Francis Hugh Alexander Leyborne-Popham, who was the battalion's adjutant and therefore is also present in loads of the other groups. These 2 officers appear in all of the numbers 9 through 12 platoon photos, and the one on the right appears to be Captain Gurth Bignell. This officer is also in the number 13 platoon, and this is Lieutenant John Henry Graham Hunter of the Royal Army Medical Corps, who was the battalion's medical officer and therefore also appears in the stretcher bearers group. Moving to the middle row, this officer is also in number 13 platoon photo, and this one is in the machine gun section group. This officer appears in number 5 platoon, and this one is in number 7 platoon. This one, I'd love to know who he is, but I have no idea unfortunately. And this man is quite possibly Lieutenant Charles Chamier, who was a known actor and writer of the time and is also in the Grenadier and number 4 platoon groups, so is presumably the battalion's bombing officer. So along the back row, this officer is in number 16 platoon. This one's in number 13 platoon. This officer appears in numbers 15 platoon and the band group. And he appears to be in the machine gun section group. This is 2nd Lieutenant Harold John Cunningham, who's also in number 9 platoon. And this officer is possibly also in number 8 platoon. This officer does appear in number 14 platoon. And this appears to be Lieutenant Reginald Caunter Carthew. And last but by no means least, this is 2nd Lieutenant George Arthur Smith Masters, who is also in number 6 platoon. And here we have the battalion's regimental staff, being Regimental Sergeant Major 7171 Water Headland, the battalion's second in command Major Bertie Philip Newbolt, the battalion's commanding officer Lieutenant Colonel Hubert Frederick Barclay, the battalion's adjutant Captain Francis Hugh Alexander Leyborne-Popham, Honorary Lieutenant and Quartermaster Joseph Archibald Martin Hislop, and Lieutenant John Henry Graham Hunter, who was the battalion's medical officer. Of those standing, I can only really suggest that this is the Pioneer Sergeant, based purely on the trade badge above his stripes. And next in line is presumably the Sergeant Cook, who appears to be attached from a different regiment based on his cap badge, although he doesn't appear in the Cook's group later. And here we have the warrant officers, staff sergeants and sergeants of the 6th Battalion. Probably goes without saying that these NCOs appear throughout the other photographs, as you may expect, with almost all of them being pre-war regulars and reservists who trained and led the battalion overseas. In the centre you can see Regimental Sergeant Major Walter Headland again. Next to him is the commanding officer, Lieutenant Colonel Barclay. Next in line being Captain Leyborne-Popham, the battalion's adjutant. And the remainder of the front row would include the senior NCOs, which would include the company sergeant majors. And on the end is the chap I'm presuming is the Sergeant Cook, although, as I said earlier, he's not in the Cook's group, so I may be completely wrong. And this is the battalion's machine gun section. The officer on the right is also the one in the middle row of the officer group, third from the left, and the one on the left shows 5th from the left on the back row of the officer group. As an aside, when you see hands on shoulders in group photographs like this, it tends to denote a connection, usually a sibling or a cousin or similar. And here are 4 small groups, all collected onto one page, including the corporals, the grenadiers, the stretcher bearers, and the cooks. From left to right, in the corporals we can see Regimental Sergeant Major Walter Headland, the commanding officer Lieutenant Colonel Hubert Barclay, and the adjutant being Captain Hugh Francis Alexander Leyborne-Popham. The Grenadiers includes the officer that I believe is Charles Chamier, who's also in the officer group mentioned earlier. And with the stretcher bearers is Lieutenant John Henry Graham Hunter, the battalion's medical officer, who you can also see in the officer group amongst others. And a number of these men can also be seen amongst the band and drums group. And on the bottom left we have the cooks, which includes the sergeants that you can see in the warrant officers group, but the man that I've presumed to be the sergeant cook doesn't appear to be here. Here are the battalion signallers, with just one officer being the adjutant, Captain Leyborne-Popham. Onto the battalion's drums and band. Top left among the drums you can see the adjutant once again, Captain Leyborne-Popham, and to his left as you look is presumably the bandmaster, based on his pace stick and not overlooking the impressive collection of long service chevrons. Moving on to the band, front and centre is the adjutant once again, Captain Leyborne-Popham, and the officer to his left as you're looking also appears in number 15 platoon and the officer group on the back row, 4th from the left. Moving on to the platoons. A company would have been comprised of platoons 1, 2, 3 and 4, with the officer in the centre with his legs crossed appearing in all 4 of A Company's platoon photographs, so I'm presuming he's A Company's commander. This is number 2 platoon. Here's number 3 platoon, interestingly with the Regimental Sergeant Major Walter Headland present, and the last of A Company's platoons being number 4 platoon. B Company would have been comprised of numbers 5, 6, 7 and 8 platoons, this being number 5, and the officers to the left and the right of these 3 appear in all 4 of B Company's platoon photographs, with the officer in the centre of course also appearing in the officer group. This is number 6 platoon, with the officer in the centre being 2nd Lieutenant George Arthur Smith Masters. Here's number 7 platoon, and this is number 8 platoon. Moving on to C Company, which would have been comprised of numbers 9, 10, 11 and 12 platoons, with this being number 9 platoon. The 1st and 3rd officers of this group of 3 appear in all 4 of the platoon photographs, so one of them is presumably the company commander, with the central officer here being 2nd Lieutenant Harold Cunningham. This is number 10 platoon, with the officer in the centre of the officer group possibly being Gurth Bignell. Number 11 platoon, also with the officer in the centre possibly being Gurth Bignell, and number 12 platoon, again also with the officer in the centre possibly being Gurth Bignell. And here's D Company, comprised of numbers 13, 14, 15 and 16 platoons, with this being number 13. The 2 officers present don't appear to have Bedfordshire Regiment cap badges or collar badges, and none of the 4 platoons in D Company have any recurring officers in their group photographs. Number 14 platoon, number 15 platoon, and number 16 platoon.